Padre Kino first celebrated Mass in this area in 1691 under a ramada, which is a shade structure, built by the Ohodam who were living here. At the time, the village was located on the other side of the Santa Cruz River. Although he chose this area to be the headquarters where the priests would live, he and other priests continued to visit this area, singing the Mass and tend to mission business. There is no record of an adobe church having been built while the village was on the east side of the river. In November 1751, a group of Odaham, led by Captain General Luis Apihakaya, rebelled against the Spanish and Yomi, who had moved into their land. The resulting conflict caused the abandonment of the mission communities for over a year. The Spanish began construction of a presidio, a military outpost, at Tubac. When everyone returned, the village here was moved to the present location near to and on the same side of the river as the new presidio. At its peak of activity, this bustling community space served as the backdrop to the lives of nearly 200 mission residents. People walked from here to attend church services, engage in the work in the fields, or to go into the gardens and orchards between the plaza and the river. The goal of the Spanish colonization was simple: to remake New Spain in the image of Old Spain. All aspects of daily life would be subject to transformation: food, language, clothing, agriculture, and religion. The Spanish used architectural traditions from across the globe. The capitals at the tops of the columns are Egyptian in style. The plastered arch design over the front door is Roman. The pointed tops on the statue niches are the East and Northern Africa. Even the bell tower niche, scalloped shelf motif, and gives a nod to Spain's patron saint, has Roman origins. Spain's influences made their way to this area, and color as well. The columns on the front of the church were painted red. The capitals yellow with black markings. Statues stood against a blue background in their niches. The plaster of the doorway was carved and painted to resemble blocks of orange marble. You can still see original paint in the doorway and under and below the windows. The bell tower was built in 3 stories. On the ground floor lies the baptistry. On the second level, the preparation room for the choir. And on the third level, the arches and bells. The scallops, shells, niches hearken to St. James, the patron saint of Spain, and indicate a baptistery below. The bell hung under each of the 4 arches. With imagination, you can see the young boys and girls standing on the ground below, pulling on the ropes dangling from the tower for Mass to begin. 49ers en route to California's gold rush recalled the haunting sounds of the bells ringing through the river valley as they approached. The arched entryway into what remains of the nave leads into the central hall of the church. In this room, the indigenous people and Spanish settlers played and celebrated the Mass each day. There were no pews. People knelt or stood during services. Along the walls are 4 side altars where devotional candles might be placed. In the walls above are the niches where ornate statues of the saints stood. Along the interior walls, weathering has exposed the sun-dried adobe bricks made by mission residents. The once brightly painted walls were decorated by the steady hands of artisans both indigenous and the Spanish. Although commonly confused with the term convent, the convento had nothing to do with housing for nuns. This building was the operational part of the mission. It functioned as shared community workspace and governmental center. It would have been alive with the sounds of people talking, working, and moving about. The rooms are aligned in a U shape around the central courtyard along the north wing, where a long raised mound is still visible today. Archaeological evidence suggests a kitchen, ironworker shop, and carpentry shop, weaving room and leather shop, and grain grinding mill were in the area. This passageway leads to the priest's office. It housed the holy investments and other objects for Mass. A priest would spend many hours working by candlelight in this room, documenting the important events of the day, such as baptisms, marriages, and deaths. The mission records are a treasure trove of information, but require some skill to interpret. They were handwritten with quill pen in the now antique Spanish. Personnel details, especially from the perspective of women and the natives, community members, are difficult to extract. The O'odham and their neighbors had complex traditions for burials. The dead were dressed well, often provided with some personal items, buried in a cavity and covered with rocks. The O'odham would sometimes burn items that had belonged to a person who died and would ask the dead to remain at peace and not come back to disturb the living. A blend of traditional and Catholic beliefs and ceremonies continues among the population today. The 14 niches in the walls surrounding the cemetery would have held paintings or sculptures of the Catholic Stations of the Cross. In the center lies the round mortuary chapel. The plan may have been to cover the round building with a dome. A family might spend time with their deceased loved ones in this room before the burial. Although burial records exist, the first burial in the cemetery took place in 1822. The previous cemetery was next to the Jesuit-era church. Many of the dead were victims of terrible epidemics of smallpox, measles, and typhus that swept through the missions. A few were killed during Apache raids. The majority of the burials were of children under the age of 5. Forests like these reach their greatest development near desert rivers or where their long roots can reach groundwater. This rich woodland plant community supports a tremendous biodiversity of insects, birds, and mammals. Today, the mesquite protects the threatened yellow-billed cockatoo, and other rare species. It provides the O'odham and later the Spanish with wood, fuel, and medicine, along with food. Mesquite flowers provide important pollen and nectar for the wildlife. The flowers are crowded into long spikes called catkins. When fertilized, the flowers form long green fruits that resemble string beans. They grow and mature through the summer, turning tan or streaked with red. The beans can be eaten at all stages of their growth. The O'odham ate them as a vegetable when green and ground the pods into a sweet, nutty flour when ripe. They were favored by many animals, including hares, pocket mice, kangaroo rats, pack rats, and javelinas. Although honey mesquite can be found in the region, the velvet mesquite dominates the landscape. Some theorize that the Spanish introduction of cattle accelerated the spread of mesquite in the area. thanks for watching. And take a little bit of time and check out my other videos on my YouTube page. Take care. May all your seas be calm.